Good morning everyone. Welcome to Matheson Library. Selamat datang di perpustakaan Matheson. I am Reni Pulengan, the subject librarian for Indonesian Studies, and this is the first Monash Indonesian Discussion Series for the year. So this is the collaboration between Matheson Library and the Monash Feith Indonesian Engagement Center. We used to run this discussion series as part of Bukan Rumpi Tapi Diskusi, as most of you already know. But as part of a much bigger plan to collaborate between or across institutions that works on Indonesia, we now have it as a monthly discussion series. And we have provided the list of the topic for the whole year. And if you haven't grabbed them, please do so, and you can see what's happening every month at Matheson Library. A couple of things that I just need to say here. So a bit of housekeeping. The toilet is on the ground floor, so if you go out and then take the stairs to go down. And another thing is that we have displayed our Indonesian collection. Again, as you already know, Indonesian collection at Monash Library is one of the most comprehensive collection in Australia. So please have a look at our collection that I display on the table at the front. And the collection itself is actually on level 1. So after the talk, if you want to come and see the collection, please come and see me and I'll take you there. Alright, without further ado, I will hand it over to the Director of Monash Feith Indonesian Engagement Center, Professor Ariel Herianto, which then who is going to introduce the two speakers for today. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me, on behalf of the center, also thanks the library, our university library, particularly Ibu Anita Dewi and Ibu Reni Pulengan for collaborating with us, and which make it possible to have such a great crowd today. I want to thank every one of you who make the time to come here. This is really the most encouraging thing about rebuilding Indonesia-related themes and event and community. That's why we have a bit of refreshment, no matter how modest it is. It is to invite you just to get together and not just listen to great speakers, but also to meet each other, particularly those who have not met, the younger, the older, so that we have can relive the old days in the new ways, in the new age, in the new community, right? We had a long tradition in the past that has gone somewhere in history. We'd like to regain it back as much as we can. And so that was also why you have a name tag, so that it's meant to be really no more than just a seminar series, but also a community building. So please do come every month that we're going to have in the next few months. No matter what your interests are, you're going to have a lot of interesting people around here. So do meet them. Just in case you haven't done so, I would like to remind you to put your mobile phone on silent mode. And definitely I'd like to also begin by acknowledging the people of the Kulin Nation, on whose land we are gathered today. I pay my respect to the elders, past and present. Today, our talk will be entitled, Are Muslim Preachers Pushing Indonesian Politics to the Right? We are very lucky to have two most prominent experts on the topic. The first is Associate Professor Julian Milley, ARC Future Fellow in Anthropology Program of the Monash Faculty of Arts. His latest book is Hearing Allah's Call, Preaching and Performance in Indonesian Islam, published by Cornell University late last year. Sorry, 2017. I forget, now it's 2019. Julian is currently the head of Anthropology Program. Our second speaker is Dr. Nadija Hussain, who lectures at the Faculty of Law, Monash University. He teaches constitutional law, Islamic law, and Asian legal systems. He is the co-author of the book Modern Perspectives on Islamic Law, published in 2013 and 2015. He's such a leading religious figure on social media, and he traveled Indonesia around the world and around the world on issues that has to do with Islam. We are so lucky and we are very grateful. He just arrived to Australia for the conference, for the seminar today, and he will be departing very soon after this on his around the world tour, I guess. So I would like to give each of the speakers 20 minutes, then we're going to have 20 minutes for question and answers. Shall we start with you, Julian?
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. Two. All right. I want to say thank you first of all to Ariel, but also to Amy Lim and Anita and Rennie, who did such a great job organising this event. It's wonderful to see so many old faces and new friends also here. It really is terrific. So thanks for the wonderful work there. Now, I want to start by first reflecting on the title that we appointed for today's session and what we mean by preacher, because we could say that it refers to any Muslim leader who mounts a stage and takes up the microphone, or does it mean a class of Islamic experts amongst the various classes of Islamic experts whose specific task is da'wah in the form of oral communication? I think it's pretty important to make that distinction for what I'm arguing today, because Muslim leaders can have all kinds of agencies to do with holding organisation roles and being parts of networks and so forth. And those authority figures tend to have a capability that preachers, I think, don't have. So, for example, Ma'ruf Amin, who might well be the Vice President of the Republic of Indonesia shortly, is an example of a person who has this agency that he gets from being well located in various organisations. He also is conceivably as a preacher because he often speaks before audiences. But I think that distinction is important to make. Preachers are wary about affiliation with segments because you carry that with you before audiences who then know of your affiliation and can reject you on that basis. So I'm going to focus today on preachers whose public recognition is based on their mediations of Islam through verbal skill. And later on I hope to show why this is important. Now, preaching is kind of a little bit in the headlines in Indonesia now because the Indonesian government has implemented or has proposed certain measures that would restrict the activities of preachers. And this is kind of unusual because since the end of the Suharto regime, Indonesia has been a very liberal place for Islamic expression, I have to say. In November 2016, the government shut down a number of Islamic websites that it claimed were violating Indonesian laws about online publication. And secondly, in July of 2017, of course, the Jokowi government withdrew the legal status of the pro-Caliphate organisation Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia. That's been appealed, but as it is, it's now illegal to preach in the name of that organisation in Indonesia. Thirdly, in early 2017, the Ministry of Religious Affairs floated a plan to certify preachers, that is to make it compulsory for preachers to acquire a certification before they took up the stage, which would be an amazing innovation in Indonesia. It would change so many things radically. And finally, in May 2018, perhaps Rennie, you can go to my next slide here, the ministry released a list of approved preachers. And this list, which they published on their website, is of approved preachers who satisfy certain requirements concerning their nationalist orientation and so forth, and their support for the Pancasila. And it had 200 names on it. And in fact, Nadia, your name's not on the list. And which I have to warn everybody, this is not an approved preacher, but he's still one of our favourites, I think, isn't he? So you'll be able to see the list soon. And a lot of the public reasoning on the part of the ministry behind these measures was that these organisations or preachers threatened Indonesian diversity. And indeed, in those websites and the preachers' messages we're talking about here and the public programs of Hizbut Tahrir, there's a lot of radical sectarianism and exclusivism, so that's not surprising. But at the same time, these changes kind of have meanings in Indonesia's political constellation that I think are very important for understanding contemporary Indonesian public life and the place of Islam and its preachers within it. So I'm going to get to those later, but first I want to give you a bit of an idea about what preaching is like in contemporary Indonesia, because it's such an amazing, it's a field of Islamic expertise that is being reshaped constantly. And I want to give you and people are rather concerned about it in some ways because the current crop of preachers, they appear to be more conservative and preach an Islam that's harsher on minority groups and other, in inverted commas, soft targets like women and so forth, than previous generations. It's causing a bit of concern. So we'll take a quick look at one of the leading exemplars of the current generation. Some of you may have heard the name Abdul Samad. He's a person in his early 40s in age, and he has a national profile as a preacher now. And as I say, he belongs to maybe the first or second, perhaps second generation of preachers who are diligently trying to exploit the online space and social media in their preaching careers. Now, I just recently published a book about, based on my experience attending stages for all kinds of face-to-face preaching, but the world of preaching is much broader than that in the present, and the online space is the area of real dynamism. So, for example, Abdul Samad and other preachers like here, they actually have editing suites, and there's an image that we'll show shortly of one such editing studio where there are 10 people employed there. On what they're basically doing is they're editing video footage of sermons, putting design features on it and uploading them to the YouTube channels of the preachers, to Facebook, Instagram and so forth, and doing all the design work that goes along with that, as well as associated media products. And of course there are people as well who are doing social media work on behalf of preachers like Abdul Samad. So Abdul Samad's team, and I say Abdul Samad's team, maybe the team owns Abdul Samad. It's like rock and roll a bit, these kind of people. The figurehead is the preacher, of course, but we don't know whether he's really, who has the kind of sovereignty, Abdul Samad the preacher or the production or agencies that are behind him. They upload one sermon every day on YouTube, and even though sometimes in the fasting month he would speak from maybe 5 stages in a day, and there'd be lots of repetition between the sermons. So the film crew attends, they send the footage back to the studio where they edit it and upload it. The content is easy in this industry because preachers, they just talk and talk and talk. So the content just kind of flows out in that way. And an example of the kind of nature of this online dimension of preaching, I think, is that at present Abdul Samad's videos are managed by a media company. That media company has then hired another media company to maximise the advertising revenue from YouTube. Apparently you need to have lots of professional assistance to maximise your revenue from YouTube. It just doesn't come like that automatically. So it gives an idea of the scale of the monetisation of the preaching of a person like that. Now, why is he so popular? Well, I think that he presents, like he does what most preachers do, and that is he presents Islam as the answers to all problems in relationships, family relationships and so on, in financial matters and so forth, in a very black and white and convincing way. And he does it in language that's absolutely compelling and sincere. And there's a very village style to it because there's lots of colourful anecdotes in it. So, for example, an important part of his speech is that he has questions from the audience, which he gets on a piece of paper. So he will typically say things like this. He'll say, okay, the next question is it true that Allah guarantees all of our livelihoods? Of course it's true that Allah guarantees all our livelihoods, he'll say. All you have to do is doa and do your sambahyang and fulfill the requirements. Allah will guarantee your livelihood. But, of course, it doesn't stop at that because you have to also go beyond that to take undertakings under your own control. So, for example, this water here is Abdul Samad's water. God has already determined that is Abdul Samad's water, but is God going to lift it up and pour it into my mouth? No, God's not going to do that. I have to do that myself. So this is a pretty kind of classic answer because you get this combination of, yeah, well, there's a doctrinal reasoning about executive behind that, but at the same time, you have to take steps under your own control to do that. And of course, a lot of us educated people would sort of think, well, okay, is that really all there is to it, this preaching thing? And well, Abdul Samad, of course, knows that most of his audiences, they don't make that backward step and ask that. They're very impressed by the sincerity and the power of the delivery. Also, Abdul Samad is a Malay person from Riau, And I think a lot of people I've met in Java like the strange way he talks, and the kind of, this is the way people in Java talk. It's a bit of a novelty factor. They really like the way he talks. So his personal style has a lot to do with this. Now, his profile, however, and his style is extremely fiqh oriented. He's very oriented to the idea that what a Muslim has to pay most attention to is the rules for daily life that come from the Hadith and the Quran. And there's ancillary media products that he publishes, and I had a chance to read. Okay, so there's the list that doesn't have Nadir Shah's name on it. The next slide, please, is Abdul Samad himself from Riyadh, and the next slide is the book that talks about preaching by me, and the next slide here is the studio I was talking about before, and I think it's a remarkable image because you just see the person preaching. It gives you no idea of what is going on in that person's career as a preacher. Can you go to the next one, please, Ren? So here's the next an example. This is the book of his that I read. It's full of questions and answers. It's quite severe. So basically, it presents the idea that the Muslim subjectivity you need is one that's completely achieved through submission to textual norms. And of course, a lot of Indonesians for decades have been saying that's not a complete Muslim subjectivity. We can go beyond that, but the Abdul Samad way is that that's enough. And it's a very decontextualised world he presents, where people don't really have to live in harmony. So of course, there's all attacks on Shia and other minority in this book. So it's a kind of disappointing read in some ways, but the message is that there is a market for this commoditisation of this conservative understanding in contemporary Indonesia. Now, people like Abdul Samad are always being asked about their political orientations. Who do you support? Constantly. And sometimes they're being offered to act as in a political role. So Abdul Samad was offered by the Prabowo opposition, I think, to be the partner of Prabowo in the forthcoming election, which he declined. But subsequent to declining, he's made some statements in support of the Prabowo opposition. And it's generally the case that conservative preachers like Abdul Samad do politically align with that Prabowo-led opposition, which leads us back to the current political constellation, which I'm going to talk about now. Let's go back a bit. In 1998, the authoritarian Suharto government was toppled after 30 years. Electoral democracy was introduced, and elections were then held at a number of levels: a national, provincial, what you call governor, and then what we might call municipal level elections. These changes really let villagers into the room of Indonesian governance and democracy, I think, regional subjects, non-metropolitans, and also a myriad of other groups, of course, but I think villages are significant because they have this dualistic character. They are held to have nothing to say. They're frequently spoken for and thought not to have any ideological initiatives, but they are numerically massive. So in elections in the regions where Muslims form a high proportion of the population, voters in the regions, villages, suddenly became very significant to elections. And so populations in regions like West Sumatra, Aceh, West Java, East Java, Bengkulu, we're talking populations between 95 to 99% of the population who are Muslim, really respect Islamic leadership. So their leaders, whom they generally trust as authorities, suddenly got this new importance in this new political environment. And that especially had implications for candidates who did not have strong Islamic credentials, because they had to work hard to present to these Islamic publics that they will be acceptable leaders. And a number of studies have in fact shown that the candidates with no Islamic credentials have had to work harder to present an acceptably Islamic profile than those who can. And of course, what this has done is bolster the authority of Islamic leaders. And of course, before these regional audiences, has it bolstered the authority of Islamic leaders on the sort of in the middle or on the sort of a liberal side, perhaps? Generally not. Generally, with the kind of conservative, rather defensive mindset that we encounter in Indonesia's public sphere at the moment, it's favoured conservative Islamic leaders. So political candidates tend to turn to them to validate their own religious commitments. So Kiai gained importance, and as a result we have quite an unseemly competition where candidates jockey to present an Islamic image and making alliance with Islamic leaders, people who aren't really accountable to the democratic process, is part of that. And that explains, I think, why the government has floated up these measures recently to restrict preachers. So let me be a bit more specific about the background to this, because Indonesian politics and Islam at the moment are a little bit difficult to understand, but here's my version of it. The coalition that governs Indonesia at this time includes Islamic parties, but it's generally dominated by parties with a more generalist, or if you like, secular or nationalist orientation. Nevertheless, as I just noted, these political actors are fearful of appearing to voting publics as being unsympathetic to Islam, especially in regions where Muslims form a large majority, so they turn to these conservative Muslim figures' support, increasing the authority of those figures in the process. Now, this has happened despite the fact that not only the ruling coalition, but also the opposition coalition basically is dominated by non-Islamic parties. And Islamic parties are part of both of these coalitions, but I think the dominant sort of thematic core and image of these parties is a non-Islamic one, or a nationalist one. But politicians are forced to play this game of pious impression management. And as a result, a kind of culture war over Indonesian identity has erupted, I think, in the present. The political opposition, though, as I mentioned, essentially nationalist in orientation, is making big claims that the government is not supportive of Muslim interests, a claim they make for political advantage, and it mobilises conservative preachers to publicise this claim. And in response, the government accuses its opponents of not supporting Indonesian unity and its most prominent symbol, the state ideology known as Pancasila. So it attempts to marginalise its opponents by associating them with anti-Pancasila elements. And in fact, that accusation I think is a little unfair, because opponents of Pancasila are in fact very few in Indonesia. That's my experience. However, for many Indonesians worried by the rise of conservative Islam, the Pancasila becomes an authentic expression of Indonesian values that protects Indonesia's ethnic and religious diversity. Because of that, Pancasila has come to serve as this kind of point of symbolic difference. And that's an unfortunate reality in the current situation, I think. Because the dispute isn't really a productive one, but it's really energised by the political process, I think, as we find in so many political environments, including perhaps our own at this point in time. That's, I think, the background for the desire of Indonesia's government to increase their regulation of preachers, and also indicates the difficulties that they're going to face in attempting to do this. Now, of course, we very recently saw an example of this contest in impression management at the highest level when President Jokowi chose as his running mate Ma'ruf Amin, a Muslim leader with a very conservative record. Can Ma'ruf Amin bring something extra to the Jokowi government in terms of performance or policy innovation? Probably not. But he certainly gives Jokowi a protective armour against campaigning that seeks to create an image of him and his government as not being committed to Islam. So the question then for us today is, who is leading this process? Preachers or politicians? My feeling is that it's political actors who are leading this, and that they understand very well the value of preachers in the current political context. So they understand the enormous symbolic power that preachers have, but the problem for preachers is that their proximity to the resources of the state and government is dependent on the political actors. And I think that there are other examples that support this. One, of course, is Habib Rizik, who a preacher who played this phenomenal role in an epic political game just recently, but who now cannot even re-enter the Republic of Indonesia. So I think it's important to end with a coda, and that is that I've limited our talk today to the developments in Indonesian Islam where preaching as a specialised class is concerned. And I think a different picture would emerge if we expanded the vision and look at other developments in Indonesian society in other fields other than preaching. I think then we'd see a picture of a field in which preachers play an important part, but not a leading part as agents. I think that's enough for now.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mbak Reni, can I use that?
Sure. Yep. You're just bringing up your
Yep.
presentation.
You want to use the slide?
No, yeah, use the slide. That, yes, that's
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Yep. Okay. So thank you, Mas Ariel, for having me, and also Julian for setting up a nice background of what's going on in Indonesia in terms of political development. So I don't need to repeat again. But just to borrow your slide here with Abdul Somad, look at the way he portrays Finja. This becomes really important nowadays because when he published this book, one here means Tauhid, one God, and also related to number one of Anies Baswedan in Jakarta's elections. And also 2014, Prabowo was also number one in the nominations. But now it changed the landscape because Jokowi is number one and Prabowo number two. So then people are going to use the old cover like this, saying now he changed his mind. Now he supports Jokowi, no longer Prabowo. So, and then Julian is right that that my name is not on the list of 200 dai that being recommended by Minister of Religious Affairs, but also Abdul Somad is not on the list. Okay, now back to my slide. So more and more of my colleagues around the world, when I travel, have a conversation about what's going on in Indonesia, they said that now more and more Saudi Arabia is going towards moderate Muslims. At least that's what they heard from Prince Mohammed bin Salman around the world, because he traveled to UK and others. Of course, this is before Khashoggi affair, right? Then those scholars said to me, but Indonesia is now more and more towards conservatism. Is it right? That's always the question that they ask me. And then my argument today is that generalization is not always right. So we have to look at in detail the groups of what we call it conservative dai. And then, so that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to show you 8 categories of conservative dai. Then I'm going to explain that they have a different agenda. They also have a different orientations. Maybe they agree on one issue, but on the other issue they disagree each other. So then it's a problematic if you want to put those conservatives into one basket, right? So we need to look at detail. And then the second thing that I'm going to explain is what are the issues that currently those conservative dais engage. And then we are going to look at again they have a agreement on one issue, but they differ on the other issues. So let me show you 8 categories here. I'm taking a risk here also to make some kind of a generalization in each category, but there is no other options to explain these things. So the first groups, what we call it mu'alaf dai. So these are people who convert to Muslims, to Islam. So yes, reborn Islam, reborn Muslim, right? And then the tendency for them is, number one, they don't have qualification as a preacher. And then when they become Muslims, they're going to attack their old religion, and Muslims like that. So then Muslim will provide a stage for them, and then they're gonna wear a preacher dress like me, like this one, like a peci, or the white cap, and then they recite some of the Quranic verses to show them that, look, I'm a good Muslim now. And they started to attack the old religion, saying that, well, Islam is the best religion, and this is the reason why I convert to Muslims. That's I provide some of the names there. And then now they become more and more political, as I'm going to show later on. So Koh Stephen Indrawibowo, for instance, recently he accused that the church offered 50 million rupiah to youth organization of Nahdlatul Ulama, Banser, to protect the church during the Christmas Eve. But of course, the church and also the Ansar rejected that accusations. Felix Yao, that's a famous one now, apart from Abdul Somad. I'm going also to talk about him later on when we talk about Hizbut Tahrir. Then Yahya Waloni, again now is viral in recent times because the way that he attacks Maruf Amin, Jokowi and others. So he becomes political, despite the fact that again he doesn't have qualifications as a preacher. Irene Handono, she was a former nun, then she became a Muslim. Then she knows a lot about Bible, and she used that knowledge now to attack a Catholic, and saying that this is the reason why then I convert to Islam. And all this Mu'alaf Da'i, they supported the 212 movement. Yeah. So have you talked about it?
No.
Yes, that movement originally when 7 or 13 million, depends on the numbers that you believe, came to Monash, the national monument in Jakarta, to support not to support Ahok as a criminal. Right? Okay. The second category, this is small organizations. So we have at least 3 main Islam organizations, Muhammadiyah, Nahdlatul Ulama, and Majelis Ulama Indonesia. That's not there. This is small organization like FPI, Front Pembela Islam. I think many of you already know about these things, so I don't need to explain more. But Wahda Islamiyah, this is a small organizations in Eastern Indonesia. So they're famous in Eastern Indonesia. Actually, originally, they are part of Muhammadiyah, but they think that Muhammadiyah is not strict enough, so they become so they separate from Muhammadiyah and become one independent organization, Wahda Islamiyah. Now, if you go to Makassar, for instance, then you're going to look at many shops, many medical clinics run by these organizations. And his chairman, Zaitun Rasmin, now stay in Jakarta and become one of the committee at Majelis Ulama Indonesia. So he met with many national figures. Then because of that, he tried to soften this Wahda Islamiyah agenda a little bit. Because for instance, if you go to Makassar and you saw that the women belong to these organizations, they use a niqab, right? And then very strict, they don't want to interact with the man. But then Zaitun Rasmin, when he becomes a figure in the national arena, then he tried to soften a little bit. And some of the hardliner of Wahda started to complain to him, saying, well, if you become a moderate, why then we separate from Muhammadiyah? Why don't we go back to Muhammadiyah, right? So what's the difference between us and Muhammadiyah then if you become a moderate? But that's their internal conflict. And we never heard about Wahda and Zaitun Rasmin before. But suddenly after 212 movement, then they got a stage, Zaitun Rasmin. Matla'ul Anwar, again, this is also a small organizations. Actually, their practice, their cultural ritual is close enough with Nahdlatul Ulama, but because of one of their leaders, his name is Tengku Zulkarnain, become famous after again 212 movement when he attacked Ahok on the televisions and also on the Twitter. Then people started to look at these things, and the tendency for this Wahda and Matla'ul Anwar is that if they speak up using their own small organization, no one will listen, right? So then they join Majelis Ulama Indonesia, and the Majelis Ulama Indonesia accommodated them, and then they speak like Tengku Zulkarnain. He never speak as a leader of Matla'ul Anwar. He said that I'm the Deputy Secretary General of Majelis Ulama Indonesia. So then the media pay attention to him. That's another strategy for small organizations to get a media attraction. Then Miumi, Majelis Intelektual dan Ulama Muda Indonesia, Bahtiar Nasir is the Secretary General of this organization. Actually, this organization was established in order to counter Islamic Liberal Network, Jaringan Islam Liberal. So that's really the idea. And again, despite the fact that Bahtiar Nasir is a good preacher, and people in like Bintaro, Pondok Aren, my brother said that when Bahtiar Nasir came, 1,000 people will gather. But at national level, no one knows about him until 212 movement. Then he got the stage. Even Jokowi met with Bahtiar Nasir and Zaitun Rasmin and other figures. The third category, Hizbut Tahrir. Julian already talked about Hizbut Tahrir. So Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, we call it HTI, HTI, because in Australia they also have here Hizbut Tahrir Australia. Indonesian government already banned Hizbut Tahrir on the grounds that they try to replace the state ideology Pancasila into the caliphate. And then they challenged, Hizbut Tahrir challenged this decision to the court, but the first and the second court confirmed government decisions, and now we are still waiting for the Supreme Court Mahkamah Agung decisions. Ismail Yunanto, and Hizbut Tahrir, Ismail Yunanto is the leader. He doesn't believe in democracy. Democracy is a kufur system. Whoever follow democracy become kafir. And Felix Yao, he's also mu'alaf. He graduated from IPB, Institut Pertanian Bogor, so he doesn't have Islamic credentials actually, but then he joined Hizbut Tahrir movement, and he became famous because his articulations to the public is really good, and then also he promote caliphate ideas. So I think 2-3 days ago, one of the state company, Telkom, invited him to deliver the pengajian, the sermon. Which of course people said that how come on one hand government banned Hizbut Tahrir movement, but then on the other hand the state company invited this figure. The fourth one, PKS, Partai Keadilan Sejahtera. Hidayat Nur Wahid, Tifatul Sembiring. I think I don't need to explain this because many of you already know about PKS. The fifth one, Salafi. We know now it's very famous. If you type in YouTube, the name of Khalid Basalama, this is number one in YouTube that people follow and subscribe to his channel. And then Salafi. That's the positive word for Wahhabi, because they don't like us to call them Wahhabi. They like us to call them Salafi. So I'm trying to be nice today. So I call them Salafi. Khalid Basalama graduated from Madinah or Makkah University. Then he has a team of a management team saying that you don't need to have organizing committee, you don't have to pay us. As long as your mosque wants to host our program, then we are going to come and we're going to prepare everything for you. That's what Khalid Basalama. However, this Salafi doesn't get involved in politics because in the original place in Saudi Arabia, it will be dangerous for them to get involved in politics. Right? They never criticized the Saudi king, so they never also criticized Indonesian president. I think at the end of last year, there was also a viral video when Riyad Bajri, one of the Salafi preachers, was asked whether Jokowi is kafir or not. And then Riyad Bajri got really upset with that question, saying that what make you ask that questions? Jokowi is a Muslim. So then he said that instead of gathering in mass demonstrations like 7 million, 13 million, why don't you pray for your leader? So then he will make it right, rather than you criticize him in the public like that. So Salafi Muslims never get involved in politics. So again, this is another examples of we have to be careful to put all the conservative guy into one basket, right? NU garis lurus. So I'm from Nahdlatul Ulama. I'm a Rais Surya of Nahdlatul Ulama in Australia, New Zealand. I'm in an official structure, but there is also a movement within Nahdlatul Ulama which becomes more conservative now. This is the name of those leaders, Lutfi Basori, Najih Maimun. And then the idea for them is that they attack Salafi. They don't like Salafi. They don't like Shia. They also do not like liberal. So in that category, they go hand in hand with Bahtiar Nasir, for instance. However, they attack Salafi, so they disagree with Bahtiar Nasir on the Salafi because Bahtiar Nasir was supported by Salafi money. So and then they disagree with Said Agil Siraj, the current leader of Nahdlatul Ulama. So if Said Agil Siraj say A, they're gonna say B. So that's why then Said Agil Siraj supported Jokowi and Maruf Amin, of course. Then Najih Maimun 2-3 days ago make some kind of declaration that they're going to support Prabowo. Right? So this is internal conflict in Nahdlatul Ulama, but it becomes political. The 7 things, this is the interesting one, hijrah celebrity. Right? So there are many celebrities, like an artist, like movie stars. Finally, they think that, well, what I did in my life was wrong, so I want to become a good Muslim. So they call it, this is a hijrah. Refer to the physical movement, migration from of Muhammad SAW, the Prophet Muhammad, from Mecca to Medina. But now they do not migrate in terms of physical, but in terms of spiritual. So they said that, well, now we hijrah, then they stop from their job as an artist, as a dancer, as a movie star, as a musician. Then they said that now the woman, for instance, wear a long and big hijab. Even some of them wear a niqab. Yeah. And these hijrah movements is now become one of the trending movement in Indonesia. Many of them quit from their job as a banker, for instance, working in an insurance company. They also quit because they said that's all haram, right? So then they want to become a real good Muslims. Some of them, not all, some of them become political, agree with 212 movement and also supported Prabowo, as we're going to look at in the next slide. Just some of the name, Ari Untung, Tengku Wisnu, and Peggy Melati Sukma, and Oki Septiana Dewi, and other names. Number 8, this is individual name. They do not actually belong to specific organizations. Like Abdul Somad, for instance. I'm going to talk briefly about Abdul Somad in the next slides. Haikal Hasan, he's a motivator actually. So a consulting a company, a motivator. After 212, then he becomes a preacher. And then because of he was a motivator, then he could speak well, right, in front of the public. Right? I criticized him 2 times because he recited the Quran in a wrong way, right? Which means that he doesn't have knowledge about Islamic literature. Then I criticized him several times when he tried to interpret the Quran, and which is not in line with the Islamic literature. And as a result, he blocked my Twitter account. But last week, Indonesian Muslim community here invited him to go to Melbourne to give a sermon. This is another issue. So not only Hasan Haikal, even Tengku Zulkarnain and others also get invited by the Indonesian Muslim community here. But that's another story. Arifin Ilham, he's famous because not only because he has 3 wives, but because he also deliver the program Zikir, remembrance of Allah's names. And before 112, he didn't get involved in politics. But after 212, now he becomes more and more political. Right? But that's individual name. That's the 8 categories. So whenever we talk about conservative dai, then the question is, which one that you're talking about? Right? We need to look at this into detail. Okay, next slide. Then we're going to look at these 8 categories with 7 issues. Right? Because as I said that they're not the same. Right? Originally they're not the same, and then in some areas they have the similar argument, they have the agreement, but on the other issues they're not. So mu'alaf da'i. So I chose 7 issues. Khilafah. The question is whether they support Khilafah, whether they support Indonesia become Islamic State, whether they accept Pancasila or not, whether they support 212 movement, whether they support the establishment of full Sharia, whether they get involved in political activities, and whether they support Prabowo or not. Well, we can talk about why I put that issues. But that's really important, as I think Julian already set up the background. Okay, for Khilafah, HTI, yes, they supported Khilafah, not the others. Why I put Abdul Somad say yes? Because there was a controversy surrounding Abdul Somad. There was a viral video saying that he delivered a speech in front of Hizbut Tahrir members that he supported caliphate. But then, in other occasions, he didn't support caliphate. So it's like that he's going to talk depends on who will invite him. Right? So that's, and then recently, he visited some figures in Nahdlatul Ulama, like Habib Maulana Lutfi in Pekalongan, K. Anwar Mansur in Lirboyo, and others. And then he kissed the hands. He even take an oath as a member of Tariqat with Maulana Habib Lutfi. Even Habib Lutfi said that no longer we call you Ustadz Abdul Somad, now we call you Sheikh Abdul Somad. So you should call him Sheikh Abdul Somad. But the fact that he mentions in the video he supported caliphate, that become the big issues now. Islamic State, Mu'alaf Da'i, no. FPI, no. HTI, of course, because they supported caliphate, they don't support a nation state like Indonesia becoming Islamic State. But PKS, that's a big question. There's always a big question whether PKS will show the true identity when they won the election or not. That's a big issue. That's why I put the question mark. 5 minutes. Okay. Salafi, that's also a question mark. Because of course he accepted the Islamic Kingdom in Saudi Arabia, but whether they will accept Pancasila or not, that's a big question. So Pancasila, Mu'alaf Da'i say yes, they accepted Pancasila. FPI, they also said they accepted Pancasila, so no problem with term Indonesia becoming Islamic State. What they want is NKRI bersyariah. Negara Islamic Indonesian Unitary State with a Sharia component, right? That's why I also put the FBI full Sharia with yes. Okay, so you see that in the 212 movement, all those categories here. Are you alright, bro? 212 movement, yeah, they all supported all this 212 movement. The establishment of full Sharia, some of them say yes, the others not. Like even NU garis lurus, they accepted Pancasila, yeah, but they supported 212 because Said Aghi Sirot NU headquarters say no to 212, then they say yes to 212. Hijrah celebrity, yes, they also supported 212. Full Sharia, yes, Hijrah celeb. Political activities, some of them say yes. Big question with Abdul Somad, because Abdul Somad was nominated by Habib Rizik Sihab to be the candidate for vice presidents along with Prabowo, but he refused it. And then some will say that on the ground, on the grassroots level, he supported Prabowo. The other said no, he say like this one in the cover book. So now he supported Jokowi, not sure, right? And except for the Hijrah celebrity, I think all those supported to 212 movement, they also now supported Prabowo. Why I put question mark with the Hijrah celebrity? Because again, some of them become a political, the others not. So we have to be careful when we want to generalize this. Which celebrity that we're talking about? Right? I think that's it,
Thank you
Mas
so
Ariel.
much.
Hopefully now I can give you some ideas about this conservative dai and the issues that they are engaged with. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mark. Just in case, for those of you who are not familiar with 212, let me just give a very brief explanation, a footnote. It represents 2nd of December 2016, which was the second largest, I think, the second demonstration, and being the largest demonstrations in the past maybe 50 years, 40 years, that was launched to attack the governor, hopeful, Ahok or Basuki Cahayapurnama, for blasphemy allegation that took place in Jakarta, that unite a lot of people get together, but as been explained by Nadir, they split soon after the movement took place. Now it's my pleasure to invite you to make comments or raise questions to the two speakers. Please let us know your name and try to be as brief as you can so that we can adopt as many responses as possible from the audience. Who would like to start? Yes, please.
My name is Tuti Gunawan.
My name is Tuti Gunawan. I was born in Monash. Anyway, I once saw a title of a thesis, I think from ANU, about the amount of donation or money coming from Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it. But could you comment a little bit about that? How much money actually coming from Saudi Arabia? Because we know that it also comes to Australia. Thank you.
You will answer that?
I don't know the exact amount, Bu Tuti, but then what I can tell you is that Indonesian government recently has become aware of these problems. Then when King, what's the name, King of Salman, yeah, King Salman came 2-3 years ago, then Indonesian government said to them that please don't send the money for dakwah to Indonesia. And then so the government say yes, okay, we stop the dakwah, the Salafi money, but it will not stop private money. So like for instance, the Khalid Basalama, the one that I mentioned from Salafi, he got the money from a private in Saudi Arabia. So then now he opens a shop for a carpet yeah, Ramadani, yeah, Ramadani, and then also Arabic food restaurant, right? So that's why that when he does the da'wah, he doesn't need to get money. Not like me, I need to get money because he already survived, he already fine with the money. So that's why he can full concentrate. That's why I said that go to the mosque. They said that don't worry, you don't need to prepare everything. As long as you accept me, I'm going to go there and going to deliver the khutbah, the sermon. So that that's the money that they get.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Is this on?
Yeah.
It isn't on, is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks. I'm Merrill Rickliffs. I wanted to ask Julian a question. Now, I agree entirely with your view that basically it's politicos who decide to let Islamic preachers or whatever have influence. That they do lead the process, as you say, And as you know, that was the argument about the book I published, I'm ashamed to say 7 years ago now, Islamization of its opponents. That in this competition, in the end, it's the politicians who control the system, control the networks, control the influence, control the structures of government. And it's they who decide to let religious issues influence them. And they do that because they think that's the way they win votes in this much more democratic system which you're talking about. But I'm wondering whether there's any sign of a change on the horizon. Now I'm asking because I think the fact that Jokowi has chosen Ma'ruf Amin as his partner has made some people think, well, this is kind of ultimate concession to Islamic forces. On the other hand, we notice Nahdlatul Ulama making a lot of noise about supporting Pancasila and about their version, their interpretation of Islam being the right way to understand it, rather than the reductionist view of the extremists and modernists and so on. Now, both politicians like Jokowi and his party, and an Islamic organization like NU, which was a massive grassroots kind of influence, are both threatened by many of the people that Nadia was speaking about. So I'm wondering whether, in fact, in this alliance of Jokowi and Ma'ruf Amin, one sees symbolically the alliance of a certain kind of secular influence policy and a certain kind of interpretation of Islam, which in fact could prove antithetical to the interests of the kind of Islamic da'i that you're speaking about.
Can you answer that?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mel. Yeah, it's a terrific question. And of course, it's a difficult one to answer. One reason is that looking forward, what are the implications of Ma'ruf Amin taking on this kind of office? I mean, it's difficult for me to believe that a person like that, such a committed da'wah warrior, could back down at all, and that he must continue to be completely, what's the word, istiqomah, completely dedicated to the da'wah kind of project. At the same time, that also seems impossible, doesn't it? I mean, he's put himself into a political position, to a political context where, by definition, one has to be flexible and accommodating and make negotiations with people. So that's something that, looking forward, I can't see how that is going to happen. About the question of the NU, what was the alliance of the NU sort of secular politics, the way that's threatened by these, its response to the threat from these kind of people. I agree completely, except I'm not sure that the followers of people like Abdul Samad, how much they really are switched on to the kind of political constellation. I mean, Abdul Samad's videos show vast audiences, and they love the stories about the way that he has a way of representing Islamic teachings as really understandable solutions to everyday life. I don't know whether it goes much further than that. The videos that they put onto YouTube, for example, the average length is 13 minutes of watching. They can tell how long people are watching for it. It's 13 minutes, which in one hand is kind of a long time, but on the other hand, it's not really a serious engagement with the media form. And about the books of Feith, do people pay any attention to them whatsoever? I guess people buy them and so on, but I guess his main audience wouldn't really be a reading audience, maybe. I don't know. These are a bit speculations. So I'm just not sure whether the kind of the nature of that opposition is that you're talking about. Are there really vast publics forming around people like Abdul Samad and Felix Xiao and so on? Or are these people who are just cruising through for an experience that is pleasing to them and they've found at the right moment in their lives? But I think it's a very interesting question, because I'm looking on with great interest at which way Ma'ruf Amin will go in the coming years.
We'd like to invite Nadir to also answer.
Just talk about Ma'ruf Amin. Several years ago, he publicly said that Majelis Ulama Indonesia never issued a fatwa to prohibit Muslims to say Merry Christmas. What we prohibited is to attend during the Christmas Eve the ritual thing. But when a journalist asked him whether he's going to say Merry Christmas, he said no. But we know that last December, he made a video saying that Merry Christmas to Christians. So in terms of fiqh, Islamic law, he's fine. because he said that I never issue fatwa saying it is haram, but he chose not to say it in the past. But the fact that now he chose to say it now, it's interesting, right? Okay.
Does anyone of them
Say happy Valentine's Day.
Yes. Actually, since you are a her presenter, can I turn that to somebody else first? Yeah.
That's fair.
Hi, my name is Celia Dunn. I'm a member of the public. Thank you very much, first of all, for your informative speech and your very informative lecture. But as a member of the public, I would like to know, in terms of what you've talked about today, how should the public see this in terms of relationships between Indonesia and Australia, and how much do you believe that the Australian public or the Australian government or those people higher up than, well, plebeian like me, should pay attention to? So how much attention should Australia be paying to this, and what is the significance in your point of view?
Good question. Thank you.
Hi, well, thank you very much for your question. Well, I think that a lot of Australians should be paying attention to these kind of things, and I think it's implicit in having a relationship with a neighbour that you do pay attention to what's going on in your neighbour's home, if you like. So, yeah, I think it's very important, and I think we have to cultivate specialisations here in Australia so that we can deepen our knowledge of these kind of things, and also expand the number of people who might know something about it. So I think there's a really strong obligation on Monash students, but certainly policymakers and our leaders to understand these things, absolutely. Perhaps the holder of the Herb Feith chair.
Somebody else? Then to you.
Nobody else. Right. Okay. I'm Jacinta Cornease, a part of Center in Indonesian Studies and CCL. My questions for both speakers, and it's about money and gender, two things which we don't talk enough, I think. So the whole thing for Julian and Gus Nadir, the massive marketing, sophisticated faro, the use of social media, the language, the performance and everything speak about money-making scheme. So I want you to comment on that. The second one is, if we look at the categories presented by Gus Nadir, correct me if I'm wrong, only two women, Irene and Peggy. Yeah. Can you comment on that? Where are they? Are they the consumers? What's the future of this? Thank you.
So the first ones on the money. Now with the social media, if you put your video like Abdul Somad put in YouTube, you can what they call it monetized money. So how many subscribers, how many people watch, then it becomes money. Right? So then and also I think in one of Julian's slide taking from Tempo magazines, that there is also people in the office with all the computer studio like that. So we could not only look at Harith Basalamah or Abdul Somad, for instance, or Haikal Hasan as a person, but there is also a machine running behind them, right? And then of course then the question is who pay for them, right? So then it comes the question of the money, whether they get the money by monetize the video in YouTube or not, because now I don't know, but I think some of you here is a colonial generation, whereas the others millennial generation, right? So then they use YouTube, they use Instagram, and then they can get money. That's the first question. The second question is on gender. I also mentioned the third names, Oki Septiana Dewi. But I think that's also interesting in the sense that we are talking about a conservative da'i, Yeah. And not many women there, right? So like a Peggy Melati Sukma, for instance, she was a famous artist, and then suddenly after she got a problem with her husband, she got divorced. She tried to find the correct path. Then when she delivered the pengajian, it's not only for women but also for men. But of course, then there'll be separations between the two. Right? Then also Khalid Basalama and Abdul Somad's followers, they are also a woman, also follow their videos. So maybe the one who give the Islamic preacher maybe for a Muslim woman are limited, but the audience, ibu-ibu pengajian, the power of emak-emak, yeah, that's really strong. I think even Khofifah become governors in East Java by trying to running this emak-emak pengajian. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Thanks, Jacinta. Yeah, that's a good question. I think about the women, are they consumers? Yeah, definitely. I think that when I was doing some research on preaching, I always thought I took a lot of head counts in audiences where the event was intended to attract listeners from both sexes, and usually it had around 70% women to 30% men. But yeah, they are preachers also. I mean, there's a lot of successful women preachers in Indonesia. Generally, they end up preaching to or giving ngaji to women. So I think that's probably because of the generally patriarchal nature of Islam as a field. A lot of committees won't engage a woman preacher to speak in front of men. I think that would happen quite rarely. So you usually end up that women have their careers speaking in front of women. About the money, yeah, I mean, wow, you could probably make a kind of chronology of key moments where more and more money has flown into inverted commas Islamic society. What about education? I mean, there's now a complete education system under the Ministry of Religious Affairs. The budgetary commitment there is just utterly amazing, and it probably dwarfs the amount of money that comes to people like Abdul Samad as a total. Yeah.
We have one last chance for anyone who would like to raise comment or questions. Yes, please.
I would like to bring Gustur back into this conversation, which we haven't heard any of much about him so far. I mean, this is the Gustur that I want to invoke. It's the guy who thought that, of course, Feith was a Muslim because he was such a manifestly good man by what he did. How could Allah possibly not accept him into heaven? But this Gustur, he said lots of things which you could never quite tell whether it was deadly serious or just a joke. And like the time he sacked Wiranto, for instance. But in particular, someone accused him of being a kafir. So Gustur comes out with his famous "so what?" Gitu aja repot, that sort of statement. And he says, well, so what? If I am a kafir, all I have to do is say the kalimat shahadat 2 times and I'm Muslim again. Now, what is the current status of that statement? Is it serious or is it just a joke these days?
This is the new Gustur.
I think there are many jokes delivered by Gustur at the time. If we repeat it in the public, we'll be in trouble now. Right? So Indonesia, I think, is already changed now in terms of the seriousness of these things. But let me tell you my own joke. Right? So at the gate of hell, an Indonesian guy, let's say Budi, meets Hitler, who killed 6 million Jews and Pol Pot, who committed genocide against nearly 2 million Cambodians. So Hitler and Pol Pot asked Budi, "How many people did you kill?" Budi replies, "None. Actually, I was a good Muslim who pray 5 times a day, fulfill my obligations of fasting of Ramadan, paying charity, and even visiting Mecca for the pilgrimage." Both Hitler and Pol Pot are shocked to hear this. "So what exactly did you do that you ended up here in the hell?" And Budi said, "I'm not sure. Perhaps it was because I did not follow what the preacher said during Friday sermon, not to vote for Jokowi."
Okay, I'm afraid we're now coming pretty close to the end of this. I'd like to invite you to join me in thanking the 2 speakers. I'm also very pleased to let you know that our next speaker next month will be a woman, again on Islam and media. She's Professor Janet Steele from the United States. Please be mindful that our regular seminar series will be on the second Thursday every month, with a few gaps in the middle of the year because of the vacation. Except next month in March, Janet can only come in the afternoon, but usually throughout the entire year, it's usually the same time from 11 to 12:30. So make sure you come in the afternoon next month. I would also like to let you know how happy we are. We're going to have a visiting fellow from Indonesia, and his name is Dr. Askar Salim. He's Director General for higher education in Islamic institutions. He will be here to be hosted by the 2 gentlemen here, working on a number of activities here. So he will be here from the middle of August to the early week of September. Askar Salim, I think many of you know him. He's from the Ministry of Religion. His title is Director General for Higher Education, Islamic Institutions. What else do I need to say? There are a number of other activities that the Feith Center is currently preparing. Other than Askar Salim, our other visiting fellow that we are preparing to host will be Glenn Fredly, the pop stars, and Alip Ambara, the political caricature. We're still figuring out the date, but it's probably in May. Needs to be confirmed. So please be patient about that. One of the biggest things that we'll do towards the end of the year will be a big conference on Chinese Indonesians, histories and identities, identity and histories. Call for people will be out very soon. I hope you will help us spread the news to your networks, and hope you will join us too as well. This will take place from the 1st to the 3rd of October. Okay. Now, before you go, can I also invite you to also join me in thanking 2 most important people behind all these activities behind the Feith Center. They are Amy Lim and Gurmit Hill. Gurmit will be the first person of your contact details if you have any questions about seminars and series. She'll be there. Okay? Now, I want to thank every one of you for your participation, and please, before you go, please return the name tag so that we can recycle that for the environment. Thank you so much. Hope to see you again next month.